I didn't plan to ruin my brother's wedding. In fact, I spent months saving up for it. Not for the dress or the trip or the hotel, no. For a gift, a real one. A gift that meant something. A $500 check I'd been quietly collecting through canceled vacations, freelance shifts, and every skipped coffee for half a year. Landon, my younger brother, had always talked about taking his wife to Tuscany for their honeymoon, so I wanted to surprise them. I wanted to do something big, something from the heart. Instead, what I got was a paper badge. At the reception, I walked up to the check-in table just like everyone else. The woman there was busy flipping through place cards and lanyards. She smiled at the older couple ahead of me and handed them shiny badges in little gold-trimmed sleeves. Their names were printed in graceful calligraphy. I waited patiently, thinking maybe she'd find mine somewhere in the stack. She didn't even look up. Just grabbed something off a separate pile and handed it over. A plain white paper badge. No sleeve. No name. Just thick black letters printed across the front, limited access guest. I blinked, assuming it was a mistake. Maybe she handed me someone else's by accident. I didn't say anything. I turned to look for someone, anyone who might explain. And then, as if on cue, my mother appeared at my side. She leaned in close like she was sharing a secret joke and whispered, "That means no plate." She smiled, not kindly, not apologetically. It was the kind of smile you give a stranger when you're trying to end a conversation. Then she walked away. No explanation, no correction, just walked away. I stood there with that flimsy badge in my hand, blinking against the rush of cold, sinking realization. No plate, no seat, no name on the guest list. Not a guest, not family, a placeholder. I tried to breathe, tried to convince myself that it was some error, that maybe my table card got lost or shuffled, but when I walked through the hall past the elegant tables dressed in linen and candlelight, my name was nowhere. I scanned the seating chart. Nothing. Not even in the back row. Not even at the Friends of the Bride overflow. It was clear. I wasn't supposed to be part of this day, not really. I was there in name only, a technicality, and so I made a decision. I walked back out of the hall, past the photographer who didn't bother to ask if I wanted a picture, past the servers setting down the plated salmon and roasted potatoes. I headed straight for the gift table. It was quieter now, nearly empty. The envelopes and wrapped packages had been stacked and arranged neatly. Mine stood out, white, unsealed, a little bent at the edge. I picked it up, opened it, and took out the check. I held it in my hand for a moment, letting the silence settle. Then I said, not loudly, but loud enough, "I think you won't need this anymore." And I turned to leave. I didn't even make it to the door before I heard the commotion behind me. Chairs scraping, voices rising, my brother calling my name, my mom yelling, "Claire, come back." But I didn't. I kept walking, out the door, into the sun, past the ocean breeze that was supposed to be part of their perfect day. They thought I would show up, smile, and accept whatever scraps they offered. But I had something else in mind. I had dignity. I guess to really understand why I walked out, you'd have to know what it was like growing up in my family. My name is Claire Anderson. I'm 36 years old, single, no kids. I work as a mental health counselor in Portland, Oregon. It's not a glamorous job, but I love it. I help people get through hard things. I listen for a living. I validate pain process trauma and hold space for people who feel invisible. Maybe that's why this whole thing hit so hard, because I know what it looks like when people pretend you don't exist. Growing up, I was the older sibling, the mature one. My brother Landon was 4 years younger, loud and charming, and always the one people wanted to be around. Teachers adored him, coaches pushed for him, and our parents. Well, they made room for his mistakes like it was their full-time job. Me, I got straight A's. I followed rules. I did the responsible thing because someone had to. And for a while, I didn't mind. It felt like I had a role, a place. I was the helper, the fixer, the one who has it together. Even in adulthood, nothing really changed. Landon went to architecture school in Seattle. It was expensive, more than he'd planned for. Midway through his second year, he was on the edge of dropping out when I stepped in. I had some savings at the time. I transferred him $20,000. No strings attached. I didn't want him to feel ashamed. I said, take it as a gift. Do well. Build something great. He did graduate. He got a job at a boutique firm and eventually moved back to Portland. Our parents celebrated like he'd returned from war. Mom threw a welcome home barbecue. Dad talked for months about how proud he was that both his kids turned out all right, but it always felt like the spotlight only really landed on one of us. Still, I showed up. I went to family dinners. I bought thoughtful gifts. I stayed late to do dishes while everyone else watched TV. And over time, I started to see a pattern. Every family gathering was somehow centered around Landon: his job, his apartment, his new girlfriend, then fiance. I was in the background, useful, dependable, and forgettable. When they got engaged, I was genuinely happy for him. Carrara, his fiance, was lovely, warm, a little reserved but kind. We talked a few times, and she always seemed to actually listen, unlike most of my family. I remember telling her once half-jokingly that if I ever ran away, she'd be the only one I'd leave a note for. She laughed, but there was something understanding in her eyes, like she got it. As the wedding planning ramped up, I noticed I wasn't really included. There were no calls asking for help or input, no invitations to dress fittings or venue visits. I didn't expect to be a maid of honor or anything, but I figured they'd ask if I wanted to be part of the ceremony, maybe even do a reading. But nothing came. At first, I chalked it up to logistics. I worked full-time, and maybe they assumed I was busy. But then the invitations went out. Mine arrived a week later than everyone else's, with just the ceremony address and a vague reception time. No mention of dinner, no RSVP card. I thought it was an oversight, and I emailed my mom about it. She replied with a short message, "Oh, it's just a small dinner after, nothing formal." I should have known then. Still, I kept saving. I'd made a quiet decision after hearing Landon complain to Dad about how much the honeymoon was costing. Italy had always been their dream, but the tickets, hotels, and expenses were stretching them thin. One night over a late dinner at Dad's house, I heard Landon say, "I just don't know if we'll be able to make it happen." I didn't say anything, but I made a note. I'd give them a check, not a flashy, dramatic one, just a quiet envelope with a card. $7,500, enough to book the trip without worry. Enough to show that I was rooting for them, even if I wasn't invited into their planning circle. The morning of the wedding, I picked up the envelope from my desk. It was simple, just a white card with their names and a note inside: congratulations. Here's to building something beautiful together. The check was tucked behind the card. Driving to the ceremony, I actually felt proud. I'd put aside my feelings about being left out and focused on what mattered: family, love, generosity. I believed foolishly that actions still counted, that people would see you eventually if you just kept showing up for them. The church ceremony was brief and beautiful. Landon looked sharp. Carrara was radiant. My parents sat in the front row dabbing their eyes. I sat a few pews back alone, not out of bitterness, just logistics. I wasn't assigned a seat and I didn't want to make a fuss. Afterward, I walked out into the sunlight, handed over my card at the gift table, and joined the line heading toward the reception venue. My heart felt full. Not flashy, not center stage, but warm. That feeling didn't last long. From the moment I stepped into the reception space, I felt it, the shift, the subtle exclusion that doesn't come from words but from absence. No greetings, no glances, no "Hey Claire, so glad you made it." Just a cold paper badge handed over without eye contact, and a whisper from my mother like a closing door. That means no plate. That was when the full story began to unfold. The reception was held at this airy glass-walled venue on the coast overlooking the water. White hydrangeas lined the walkways, and every table glowed with candles and string lights. It looked like something out of a wedding magazine, elegant, dreamy, intimate. Except, apparently, I wasn't meant to be a part of it. After I received that paper badge and my mom whispered her line, "That means no plate." I stood still for a long moment trying to process what was happening. It felt surreal, like I'd wandered onto a movie set where I wasn't on the cast list. At first, I honestly believed there had been a mix-up. I approached the seating chart, a large, ornate mirror with names carefully written in white ink. I scanned for mine. I started at the family tables, parents, siblings, grandparents. No Claire. I looked again, checking the corners, the overflow sections, even the friends from work groupings. Still nothing. I walked slowly through the venue, my badge swinging gently from the lanyard around my neck. People smiled politely, but no one approached me. A few looked at my badge, then quickly looked away like I had food on my face or spinach in my teeth. A silent understanding passed between them. This one doesn't belong. I finally made my way toward the back wall where a few standing cocktail tables had been set up. There was no food laid out there, just some water pitchers and a single tray of crackers. A few other limited access guests hovered in the area. Distant relatives, maybe coworkers, people who didn't know anyone well enough to ask questions. I stood among them, holding my clutch, staring at the beautifully arranged room I had no place in. There were speeches happening. I heard Landon raise a toast thanking friends for traveling so far, and to their families for their love and support. My parents clapped. People laughed. Carrera leaned in and kissed him on the cheek, her eyes sparkling as camera flashes caught the moment. And me, I was invisible. I looked down at the badge again. Limited access guest. The words stung because they were true. Limited access to space, limited access to respect, limited access to a family I'd poured my time, money, and love into for decades. I stood there silently hoping someone would notice, that someone would walk over and say, "Oh my God, Claire, you're not seated. That must be a mistake. Let's fix it." But no one came. Not my mom, not my dad, and definitely not Landon. They knew I was there. I'd seen them glance in my direction, but they didn't approach. They didn't wave me over or offer a chair. They just let me stand off to the side like a substitute teacher at a high school dance. That's when something shifted in me. A quiet, burning clarity. I wasn't just excluded. I had been deliberately placed on the outside. They didn't forget me. They didn't overlook me. They decided where I stood literally and emotionally, and they thought I'd accept it. They thought I'd smile, say nothing, maybe shrug and say, "That's okay, I'm just happy to be here." But I wasn't happy. I was humiliated. I left the cocktail area and slowly made my way back through the hallway, past the restroom signs and a coat check that no one was using. I retraced my steps to the entryway where the gift table stood. It was quieter now. Most of the guests had found their seats. The noise from the reception room had dulled to a distant hum of clinking silverware and laughter. The gift table had a few beautifully wrapped boxes stacked in columns along with a number of sealed envelopes. And then I saw mine, white, unsealed, slightly bent at one corner. It wasn't hard to find. I picked it up, opened it slowly, and slid the check out into my hand. I held it for a moment, thinking about the hours I'd worked to earn that money, the weekends I'd sacrificed, the overtime shifts I'd taken, the generosity I felt when I first wrote that check and tucked it behind the card. And then I made my choice. I turned slightly, just enough so that anyone watching could hear me, and I said clear, calm, with no anger in my voice, "I think you won't need this anymore." Then I turned and walked away. I didn't rush. I didn't make a scene. I walked like someone who finally knew the answer to a question they'd been asking their whole life. As I reached the door, I heard chairs scraping, then hurried footsteps behind me. My name being called. "Claire. Claire, wait." I didn't stop. My mother's voice followed louder now, desperate. "Claire, come back. Come back." I didn't turn around. I stepped into the summer air, slid the check back into my purse, walked to my car and drove off. The ocean glittered in the distance. The sound of waves crashing mingled with the hum of my engine. And I felt calm. Let them toast without me. Let them dance, take photos, post smiling group shots that didn't include me. They didn't want me there. Fine. But they weren't going to use me either. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, though I was, but because I couldn't stop replaying everything in my head. The moment I got the badge. The way my mom said it like a joke that wasn't funny. The silence at the tables. My name missing from the chart. The white envelope lying there so fragile, holding something I'd poured not just money into, but love. That scene kept looping in my mind like a movie I couldn't turn off. The next morning, the text started. First from my mom, "Can we talk?" Then from my dad, "Let's not let this ruin the weekend." And then finally from Landon, Claire, please call me. None of them said sorry. None of them admitted anything. They acted like my reaction was the problem, not their treatment. My mom even wrote, "We just thought you'd be okay with standing. You always say you don't care about the fancy stuff." As if standing was some kind of honor. As if my feelings were a luxury item I'd chosen not to wear that day. By noon, my dad called. I ignored it. He called again, then sent a text. "Come by. Your brother's here too. We want to clear the air." I didn't reply right away. I took a shower, made eggs, cleaned the bathroom. I wanted to remind myself that I didn't owe them urgency. I didn't owe them grace or patience or the benefit of the doubt. But still, a part of me was curious. So I went, not to forgive them, but to see what they'd say when they realized they'd lost the one person who never asked for anything but respect. When I pulled into the driveway, Landon's car was already there. So was Dad's. The house looked the same as it always did. Beige siding, slightly crooked mailbox, my mom's garden flamingo leaning to one side. But something felt different, like the walls inside had heard what happened and were holding their breath. I didn't knock. I walked in. They were all in the living room, Mom on the couch, Dad in the recliner, Landon standing near the fireplace, like he didn't know where to sit. My mom smiled a little too quickly. "Hey, honey, glad you came." My dad gave a short nod. Landon half raised a hand like he wasn't sure whether to wave or hug. I sat down. I didn't say a word. I waited. Dad spoke first. "It was really unfortunate how things went yesterday. Not that they made it unfortunate, just that it was unfortunate, like rain on a wedding day, like traffic." Then Mom added, "There was just a lot of miscommunication. Things were hectic, seating charts, catering limits, all that." She used the word oversight more than once, like I just slipped through a crack in a spreadsheet. Landon said almost nothing. When he did speak, it was vague and half-hearted. I didn't know it was going to be like that. "I figured you'd understand." Understand what? That I was the only sibling, the only close family member excluded, that I got the only badge. Without a table, I nodded slowly, pretending to take it all in. When they finished their monologue of damage control, I said, "One thing, I might change my mind." That's all. No promises. No explanation. Just that word might. The room shifted instantly. My mom sat up straighter, her eyes wide like I'd handed her a lifeline. My dad let out this little breath like relief was already washing over him. Even Landon looked up for the first time and met my eyes. They thought they'd won me back. My mom started talking fast about how generous I was, about how the money would go directly to the honeymoon fund, about how she didn't want this little thing to hang over us. Dad chimed in with something about families having rough patches and getting through them together. Landon said nothing, not even a thank you. I smiled a little and stood up. "I'll need time to think." And I walked out. Let them sit with that word might buzzing in their ears like a secret promise. Let them feel what it's like to hope for something you desperately need and not know if you'll get it. Because for the first time in years, they needed something from me, and I wasn't sure I was in the mood to give. After I walked out of their house that day, I didn't hear from them for almost 48 hours. I could feel them waiting, holding back, unsure how to push without pushing too hard. It was like they all got together and agreed to play the give her space card, hoping that space would somehow make me soften. But space had the opposite effect. I thought more clearly in that silence than I had in years. On the third morning, my dad texted me. We talked to Landon. "Everyone's really sorry. Your mom's looking at cheaper honeymoon options. Just wanted to keep you in the loop." Cheaper. So they hadn't booked anything. They were still waiting for the money I might give. I responded with a simple line, "If I help, it'll be a formal loan. Interest, terms, signatures." No response. Hours passed. Then my mom replied, "But it was meant as a gift." "Wasn't it?" I answered. "It was going to be. Then you handed me a paper badge and told me I wouldn't be eating." Silence again. The next morning I followed up. "Also, I want out of the family group chat. Don't send me pictures of pool parties or holiday brunches, unless I'm actually part of the family." My mom replied with a single emoji, like that was supposed to cover years of being ignored, used, and set aside. That same afternoon, I remembered something else. 6 months earlier, my dad's car had broken down. I had a second vehicle I wasn't using much, so I let him borrow it for a week or two. That was the deal, just until he got things figured out. Of course, I never got it back. Every time I asked, there was another excuse. The mechanic was slow. The part was on back order. He hadn't had time to deal with it. It became another thing I gave up quietly. But the car was still in my name, still on my insurance. I logged into the account and confirmed everything was still active under me. That same day, I scheduled a tow for Friday morning. No warning, no conversation, just an address and a time. Friday at 9:12 a.m. My phone rang. My mom. I ignored it, then again, then a third time. Finally, I picked up. "There's someone outside," she said, breathless. "They're towing the car. Did you do this?" "Yes." Silence. Why, she asked. "I'm changing insurance companies," I said, which wasn't a lie. "I need everything under my name off the policy." "But we need that car," she said. "We had plans." "This is really inconvenient." I could hear my dad in the background yelling at someone, probably the tow driver. I said, "Then maybe borrow one. Rent. Figure it out." That's what I'd have to do, right? "This is about the wedding, isn't it?" "No," I said. "This is about patterns." And I hung up. Later that evening, I got a message from Landon, the first one directly from him since the wedding. "Can we talk?" Just us. 5 words, no punctuation, no warmth, no accountability. I stared at it for a long time. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. He knew. He had watched me stand at the edge of that wedding, invisible. He had watched me leave. And he had said nothing. I didn't reply until hours later. Sometime. Not today. He could wait. Let him sit in the silence they'd all given me for years. Let him know what it felt like to need something from someone who doesn't owe you anything anymore. For once, I was pulling the strings, and I wasn't in a rush. That week, I didn't respond to any more texts. Not from my parents, not from Landon. I just watched. Waited. I wanted to see how long it would take before they cracked. They didn't say they were sorry. They didn't say they messed up. They just waited for me to be the bigger person. But I wasn't interested in being big or small. I was interested in being done. 3 days after the car was towed, I dropped by my parents' house unannounced. Not to make peace. I just wanted to see what their faces looked like when they realized I wasn't bluffing anymore. I parked across the street and walked up the familiar sidewalk lined with cracked stones and overgrown roses. My mom answered the door surprised. Her smile twitched like it had been practiced all morning. "I didn't know you were coming," she said. "I know." I walked in. My dad was in the living room watching the news. He flinched when he saw me, like he wasn't sure if I came to talk or to collect. No one offered coffee this time. No fake warmth. No jokes about childhood. My dad muted the TV, sat up, and leaned forward like he was preparing a business pitch. He said they had spoken with Landon, that he was really upset about everything, that the wedding had been chaotic and decisions had to be made quickly. Logistics, pressure, confusion, all the usual excuses neatly stacked. Then my mom chimed in. "We've been looking at alternative honeymoon options," she said. "Something more local, smaller." I asked, "Have you booked anything yet?" They shook their heads, still figuring it out. I nodded, letting the silence thicken. Then I said I might be able to help, but I was thinking it would be a loan. The room froze. "What kind of loan?" my dad asked. "Monthly repayments," I said. "With interest. Nothing extreme. Just something formal. A contract." "I want signatures." My mom's face turned pale. "But it was going to be a gift." "It was," I said. "Then you gave me a paper badge and left me out of your wedding like I was a second cousin from out of town." She looked like she might cry. My dad said nothing. "And one more thing," I added. "I want the family group chat shut down. No more pretending like nothing happened. If you want to treat me like part of this family, start acting like it." My mom opened her mouth, probably to say something conciliatory, but I stood up. Or I said, "You can borrow the money somewhere else, or sell something. Or maybe Landon can pick up a second job. Figure it out." I walked out before they could say anything else. I didn't get halfway down the driveway before Landon pulled in. He parked, crooked, rushed out of the car. "Claire, wait." I stopped. He looked tired. Not the stayed up too late tired, the everything's unraveling tired. "I know they screwed up," he said. "I know I did too. But you've made your point." Okay, can we please stop this? I didn't say anything. I asked Dad for help, he said. I didn't know they were going to treat you like that. I swear I found out after. I stared at him. Did you say anything when you saw me at the reception? Standing alone. When I walked out with the envelope? He didn't answer. I meant that gift. I said, every dollar. He nodded. I got into my car and drove away. That night I got a message I didn't expect. It was from Carrara, Landon's fiancé. Hey, it said, I don't know everything that happened, but I just want you to know. I'm really sorry. I saw what they did. You didn't deserve it. I read it twice, then a third time. It stopped me in my tracks. For the first time, someone in that whole family acknowledged what had happened. I replied, thanks for saying that. I really appreciate it. She responded instantly. I just wish you'd stayed. I think things would have turned out different if you had. I didn't agree, but I didn't argue either. She didn't need my bitterness. She'd already shown something the others hadn't: decency. The next few days were quiet again. No messages from my parents. Nothing from Landon. But I could feel them hoping. They hadn't given up yet. They thought I was softening, that I'd come around. Instead, I was sharpening my boundaries. That weekend, I sent my mom a text. Are you still delaying the honeymoon? She replied in under 2 minutes. Yes, we haven't booked anything. Just waiting to see how things play out. I followed up. So you're still waiting to see if I'll help? There was a pause. Then, we're hoping, yes, but it's your decision. No pressure. Of course there was pressure. There always had been. But they were trying to make it look like grace. I let a full day pass. Then I sent one more message. I talked to a financial advisor. If I help, it'll be a formal loan. Interest, contract, and you're not allowed to bring it up outside the paperwork. Ever. No response for hours. Finally, my dad replied, Are you being serious right now? I didn't answer. Later that night, my mom texted again. Maybe we can all meet and talk calmly. I sent a thumbs up emoji. No words. Just that. Let them guess what I meant. Let them sit in the same silence they'd handed me at the wedding. Let them wonder. We met the next day at my parents' house. My mom had made coffee. My dad had printed out a single-page document with a list of alternative ideas for compromise. One of them included me giving half the money now, and the rest after trust has been repaired. Ryan, sorry Landon wasn't there. I asked why. My mom said softly, he doesn't want to be part of this anymore. He's too stressed. I smiled. That's fair. I'm stressed too. So let's wrap this up. My dad slid the printed page toward me like it was a peace treaty. I skimmed it, folded it neatly, and pushed it back. I've made my decision, I said. You'll need to figure it out without me. Borrow the money, earn it, sell something. But don't ask me again. My mom's lips parted like she wanted to argue, but no sound came out. My dad sat back slowly like the air had been punched out of him. And I'll never forget that moment. The moment when all the hope drained out of their faces. The moment when it became real. They had bet everything on me doing what I always did, giving in. But not this time. I left without another word. The next morning, I woke up to silence. No texts, no calls, no guilt trips wrapped in emojis. Just quiet. I wasn't surprised. A few days later, I got a message from Carrara. They told me you shut everything down, she wrote. I just want you to know I still think you were right. I stared at her words for a long time. Then I replied, You're the only one who gets it. She sent back, Maybe I'm just not used to this kind of family yet. That made me laugh, the sad kind, because she said out loud what I'd spent years trying not to admit. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was punishment. A week passed, then 2. No birthday message from my parents. No half-hearted phone call from Landon. Not even a forwarded joke email from Mom, the ones she used to send every Tuesday like clockwork. I stopped checking the group chat. Stopped wondering if they'd suddenly remember me. They didn't. They weren't mad that I walked away. They were mad that I did it with dignity. I think part of them expected me to come crawling back. Maybe they pictured some teary apology, me whispering that I'd overreacted, that I missed them. But I didn't. What I missed was the version of them I thought they were, not the ones that actually existed. Still, a small part of me stayed open for closure, if not connection. I held on to a dinner reservation I'd made weeks before, just in case someone grew a conscience. It was for a little place I liked. Quiet, good wine, the kind of place where people talked softly and made eye contact. When my birthday came, I canceled it. I ordered takeout instead, ate on the porch with a glass of red, and my dog curled at my feet. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like something was missing. They thought they'd frozen me out. What they didn't realize was I'd already left. A few more weeks passed. I focused on work, went hiking again, booked a trip to Alaska I'd put off for 3 years. My therapist said I looked lighter. I think she was right. Then one night, late, almost midnight, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. It started like this. "Hey, I hope this isn't too weird, but I really need to tell you something. It's about the wedding and your brother." My stomach sank. But I kept reading. "This is Carrara's cousin. I helped organize parts of the wedding, seating RSVPs, all of that. I saw the original guest list. You were listed as family. Full access. Same table as your parents and Landon." Another message came through seconds later. 3 days before the wedding, your mom emailed a revised list. You were the only name that got moved. Landon approved it. I remember thinking it was weird, but figured it was a family thing. I didn't move, just stared at my screen. Not shocked, not angry, just exposed. Like someone had finally turned the lights on in a room I'd been stumbling around in for years. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't about budgets or logistics. It was a deliberate choice. They saw me on the list part of the family and chose to remove me. One more message came through. "I'm not trying to stir anything up. I just couldn't sit on it anymore. What they did wasn't okay. I'm really sorry." I stared at my phone for a long time. Then I scrolled back through old messages from Landon. The one where he said, "I don't know how we're going to afford the honeymoon." The one where I replied, "I've got you. Don't worry." They knew. They knew I was giving something meaningful, and they still decided to cut me out. They wanted the money, not the relationship, not the photos, not the hugs, not the seat, just the envelope. That's when the pain stopped. That's when the switch flipped, because I finally understood exactly who they were and I had proof. No more wondering if I was overreacting. No more waiting for the apology that would never come. And no more second chances. Not out of spite, but because I finally loved myself enough to walk away. They gave me a paper badge. I gave them everything else. And now they get nothing.